Welcome back to Iron Rage, brought to you by Species Nutrition. Visit speciesnutrition.com. I'm Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined by my raging co-host, John Romano. We're back.
Hey there. What's up?
We're still on the air. That's a good sign.
Yes, and with Olympia passes.
That's right. Now, this week's topic, and I have to keep picking topics that are relevant to what's going on in the industry, kind of plays off of the interview I did with that synthol guy, Kenny O'Neill, the other day. And he had mentioned to me that he was using 16 IUs a day of growth hormone, or maybe 18 IUs of growth hormone. So I said, you know what, we got to do a show on growth hormone and the insanity that's out there now. But before we get to the insanity of what's going on today, we got to kind of take a step back. Let's go back, John, to like 1993, 92, actually probably back to 1990 when synthetic growth hormone started being more readily used in the bodybuilding world. A lot of people don't know where the genesis of this came from. Initially, back in the 70s and 80s, guys were using cadaver growth hormone. They would basically, the person would be dead, they'd go and cut open the skull, and they'd grind up the pituitary glands, and they would use cadaver growth hormone. And then what was happening was people were getting viral infections from this because the brain carries these long-acting viral particles called virins or prions, and it can lead to Jacob Creutzfeldt syndrome. So people stopped using that because there's no cure for that disease. And the labs said, hey, if we can make insulin, we can synthesize growth hormone. So Genentech was the first company to do that. And they did some research, and they researched the GH molecule, and they synthesized it in the lab, and that was called protropin. Eli Lilly was another company that came out and said, we want to make growth hormone, but the government said, no, you can't, because Genentech has a patent on it, a use patent on it for growth deficient kids. So Lilly did a little more research, and they realized that Genentech made a mistake. It was not in a 192 amino acid sequence. It was actually 191 amino acids. And they made their own version called Humatrope. Now, the protropin version worked, but in certain populations of people, they produced antibodies against it because it was not exactly the same as the human growth hormone being produced, in our bodies. It was a little off. Now, supposedly those antibodies were not neutralizing. Now, I have a feeling they weren't because I used the old protropin and they worked. But those are the two companies that were out there, and there was no one else, basically. And eventually, Genentech decided, maybe we did make a mistake. And they came out with a new product called Nutropin, which was a liquid growth hormone, and they corrected the sequence. And, I don't know, John, if you remember back in the day, Genentech factory was in San Francisco. I haven't told the story on the air before, but Mike Matarazzo had a biker friend. I could tell the story because all the people involved in the story are no longer alive. May they rest in peace. Mike Matarazzo, the professional bodybuilder, who is no longer with us, unfortunately, had a biker friend who worked at Genentech. And what he realized and what he found out was that that Genentech only inventoried the growth hormone labels. They didn't inventory the product itself, which is just an indication of how cheap the stuff was to make, even though they were selling it for a fortune. And if you swiped the bottles before they got their label on them, no one knew that they were missing. And they had this whole little inside thing going on where they would get these Nutropin bottles, and everyone was using them back in the 90s. Because of that, until the guy, unfortunately, who was working at the Genentech factory got into a bike accident and died. That was the end of the connection. But that was what people used back then. And John, what were the dosages people were using? Yeah.
Well, before I answer that, I got to ask you a trivia question based on something you said 78 paragraphs ago. What famous sports celebrity died from the brain viral bacteria growing in the crest hormone, growth hormone, harvested from cadavers?
Real, I don't. You might have me stumped. I would want to say Lyle Alzado, but
you are right.
Is that what he had? Really?
That's who it was.
Was that what the virus he had? I thought he had like a lymphoma.
He an essential nervous system lymphoma, but it was brought on by the pyrons that were found in the human cadaver hormone.
I didn't know that. That's a good trivia question, John.
And unfortunately, that same central nervous system lymphoma is also experienced in HIV patients. So there was always this whole thing about Alzheimer's, dying of AIDS, but it was never true.
Well,
that was because he told me point blank that he was taking Crest hormone, and I mean back when I knew him in the 80s.
But when I went to when you went out to Venice, California, all the gay people came up to you and tried to hook up with you, right, and talk to you and everything like that. And one of the gay people that I met out there, told me that Lyle Alzado was gay. Was that true?
There was a rumor of that, but no, he wasn't. I mean, I knew him. I used to train with him every day for like 2 years when he was making his comeback. Yeah. And if you spend that much time training with somebody, you get an idea of if they're soft or not. And no way. I mean, and I've seen him with smoking. Not this matters, but smoking hot women in clubs and stuff. So I never saw him with a guy. I mean, I hung out with him. He never ever was overtly anything other than hetero to me.
Right. Well, let's get back to growth hormone for a minute, because it was important that we set the stage of what it was like and where it came from, because people think it came from China. China didn't make any growth hormone back in the 90s. It was all made in the United States. The scientists did all the research here, and then everyone stole it overseas from us. But the bottom line is that for many, many years, the only GH you can get was Eli Lilly's Humatrope or Genentech's either Protropin or Neutropin, and that was it. And it was very expensive. And I don't believe, I can go on record, maybe you can say I'm wrong, I don't think anyone ever used more than 3 or 4 IUs a day back then when it first came out.
When it first came out?
Yeah, when it first came out.
Well, the next day they were using like 12.
Were they really, though? That far back?
I knew. Let me count. I'm not going to name names, but I'll count out loud right now. 2, 3, at least 7 guys I knew in the early 90s who were taking over 12 IUs a day. Really?
Wow. Who knew?
Yes. Several of them were on the Mr. Olympia stage in those years.
How the hell were they affording all that GH? Because back then it was very... I remember a Humatrope kit, which was 12 IUs of GH, was $220. And that's if you knew the person.
One of these athletes told me that for the Olympia, they spent $55,000 on growth hormone.
I hope they broke the top 5.
They did, in fact.
Oh, okay. But it's crazy though. But you're right. It really did cost that much money back then. So only the elite guys were really using it.
Right.
Look, I used, and I've been pretty open about this. I used anywhere from like 2. I started out at 2 IUs because I couldn't afford more than that, and probably 3 or 4 was the most I used for most of my early part of my career. And I got great results for this stuff because the stuff was real. It was pharmaceutical, came out of the pharmacy. There was no doubt the stuff worked. And it was like lighting a fire or throwing lighter fluid onto the fire, I should say. It really ignited the muscle growth and kept me super lean. I know that. The GH today, I think that these guys are using, the Chinese, is just not as good. But I think people are crazier today, too. I think people are taking way, 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 way more GH than is necessary. And I think that's why we got a lot of side effects today that we don't see.
Right. What do you think the number one side effect of overdoing it on GH is? What's your opinion?
Excessive fluid retention. Excessive. You see these guys; they're like sweating, they're bloated. And it's just everywhere. Their blood pressure is high because of it, and their hands are going numb. They got like every quirky side effect of GH. And you know what? The saddest part is the most dangerous side effect that no one knows about until they actually, by chance take a blood test, is that their blood sugars are running super high.
Right. Insulin insensitivity.
Yeah, they become insulin resistant. When there's that much GH in your bloodstream, what happens is that your pancreas has to work harder to produce extra insulin because the insulin can't reach its receptor. And if it can't get to its receptor because there's too many growth hormone molecules there, your body has to produce extra insulin. And if your
you should explain about the similar receptor affinity.
Well, they don't really have the same receptor affinity, believe it or not. growth hormone, as we know, will go to the liver and get degenerated into IGF-1. The liver will release IGF-1. IGF-1 will compete with insulin receptors, which is not a problem, though, John, because IGF-1 will lower blood sugar, too. So that would actually be helpful. The problem is that growth hormone itself crowds the receptors out. And when the receptors are crowded out, it's like the insulin can't get to the receptor. And when the insulin can't get to the receptor, the body just thinks there's not enough insulin. So it starts producing more from the pancreas. The problem is when the pancreas has worked this hard all day long, 24 hours a day, because the guy's on GH 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, eventually the pancreatic beta cells start to die off. And when they start to die off, now blood sugar levels start to run high because there's not enough insulin being released.
Right.
And once that happens, you're kind of screwed in a sense, because now you're going to have to take insulin replacement for the rest of your life. And that's why I think there's a lot of bodybuilders out there, more so than we'll even admit. But there are a couple of guys that actually are verbally have admitted it. Lionel Baiki said he's a type 2 diabetic. I know Ronnie Raquel did, and I don't know if that's from GH or not, but it's a good possibility. They're having to take insulin for the rest of their life because of this. And you know what? It's a dangerous thing, because if you don't catch it, you're going to get the side effects of having high blood sugars, which is, kidney damage, damage to the vessels of your eye, and cost you your vision, the extremities, you get neuropathies, you can lose limbs later in life. So this is not a fun side effect. This is not a reversible side effect to a certain degree if it gets beyond a certain point. And I think we're going to see a lot more type 1.5 or type 2 diabetics, as we're classifying them, in the next 10 or 15 years. And that bothers me, because you know what? We want to be healthy as bodybuilders. We eat such clean diets, and then to be a type 2 diabetic because you're taking too much GH, and it's not even doing anything above and beyond for these guys. It's not making them look any better. In fact, worse. I think the guys look worse.
Worse. Definitely worse. I mean, the thing about being all big and bloated, you put on 4 sweatshirts, you look huge. But, your poor kidneys, we got to remind these guys, when their blood pressure goes up, it's not just making them veiny and red. It's stressing their kidneys. And you want to fry your kidneys the fastest way possible, keep your high blood pressure and don't do anything about it. You'll be on dialysis in no time.
Yeah.
So it's that overdoing it for that one reason alone. That and the insulin resistance is just a ridiculous price to pay for side effects that don't represent an equal amount of or any amount of greater improvement. It's actually counterproductive. So it's really stupid. Yeah. But why are and what's worse now, Dave, is there's so much variety in growth hormone now. It's way past Lilly and Genentech. All that shit coming out of China and India and the Middle East, and who knows if it's diluted, if it, not up to strength and milligram wise per bottle, if it's clean, if it's 191, 192. You have no idea knowing. And I've seen these kits come in from China that they're selling 126 IUs. These guys are buying them for $200 and selling them, $1,500, $750, whatever.
Well, first of all, people are going to say, well, what can we do about it? Obviously, people are going to take growth hormone. There's 2 things you can do that'll definitely be protective to your body. Number 1 is, if you're going to take GH, buy yourself a blood sugar monitor and check your blood sugar a couple times a day. You prick your finger and check it. If you're not running high and you're running in the right realm, which is under 120 during the day, and fasting in the morning should be under 100, then you're good. Okay, if you're running higher than that, even 1 or 2 points higher than that, that's a problem. That means you got to address that. Now, the other thing you can do is check your blood pressure during the day, or a couple times a week at least. See what it's running in the morning when you wake up, before bed, in the middle of the day. If your blood pressures are high, go get some blood pressure medications. We know you're not going to stop taking the steroids and the GH. At least go on some blood pressure meds. It's a no-brainer, The other thing is, stop using excessive dosages. You don't need to take 12 IUs to be a pro bodybuilder. Believe me, there are plenty of guys that turn pro taking 2 or 3 IUs a day. It's unnecessary. Okay, these are some safety mechanisms you can make. What do you say, 4, John?
4 IUs, the max.
Yeah,
4.
That's what I think. 4 or 5 is
all you need.
Yeah,
4 IUs. Monday through Friday.
And
Give your freaking system a break.
And guess what? If you take less of the real stuff, you'll save money. Now, I know people say, well, the pharmaceutical brand is so much more expensive. Well, I know guys like Boston Lloyd that are taking like 30 IUs a day of the Chinese one because they think it's underdosed. It still costs money to buy that stuff. Spend the money on the pharmaceutical one and take 2 IUs a day. At least you know it's real. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Now, I know we had a couple questions. Johnny just texted me a couple questions that a couple people are asking me. They want to know about the oral GH, MK677. Is that what they're asking, Johnny? Yeah. Look, all the peptides that I've seen, the GH-releasing peptides, first of all, anything oral won't work. But even the injectable peptides that cause the pituitary gland to release GH, what we call the growth hormone releasing hormones, they don't do anything compared to what taking real GH will do. I have not seen results, although I have seen people report, and I've seen this, that they do make you hungrier. So if you're trying to get your appetite up, GHRP6 is great. A couple of guys, I have a couple of people I work with who tell me that some of the GH releases help them sleep better. They feel like they get a better night's sleep on this stuff. So that's okay. But if you want to get growth hormone results, you got to take growth hormone. I haven't seen too many results. Now, having said that, for a hormone replacement type of situation and maybe for a longevity issue, some of the growth hormone releasing hormones are good, like the sermorelins, but you're not going to get super muscle growth from it. You're just going to feel a little bit more rejuvenated. You'll recover better. And so it depends what your goals are. I'm talking here, John and I are addressing the hardcore bodybuilder, the things they need to take, like that Kenny O'Neill guy told me the other day. Remember you told me, John, you told me you felt that Kenny O'Neill's gut was hanging out a little bit. Well, the guy's on 16 IUs of GH a day.
Yeah, I wonder how that happened.
16 IUs.
You know, that's the...
He's taking 6 IUs... Hold on, let me just say. 6 IUs of pharmacy grade, and then just to play it safe, in case that's not enough, he's taking like 10 IUs of the Chinese stuff.
Chinese stuff.
Yeah.
Duchesne always used to say, if you have a choice between taking the real hormone or a secretagogue, a releaser, or whatever, he goes, always opt for the real hormone. That goes for, testosterone, steroids, growth hormone, whatever. If you're faced with either the real hormone or something like the real hormone, come on, common sense. You take the real hormone. Yeah. I mean, come on.
Here's the problem, John. The pituitary gland is very variable in every person. And if you're taking a secretagogue or something that's going to a GH releasing hormone, who knows how much growth hormone you have in the pituitary gland that can be stimulated to be released. Everyone's different. So some people may respond well to the GHRHs, where a lot of people won't respond at all. It's like trying to take HCG to stimulate testosterone production so you can grow muscle. It's a very difficult.
Yeah, there's idiots that do that too.
Yeah. Now,
so we have them all. And your point about the dosage is incredibly accurate because that's the truth. And you do blood tests for IGF, and you can see what the difference is between taking 4 IUs and 12 IUs, and the difference is minimal.
Well, that's a good point you make, John. The reason I was just going to bring up, GH exerts its growth effect through IGF-1 release from the liver. So if you take 4 IUs a day, or if you take 12 IUs a day, or if you take 20 IUs a day, your liver could only produce so much IGF-1. So you're kind of wasting your money if you're taking excessive amounts of GH, okay, because your liver cannot keep up with the production of IGF-1. Also, so people might say, well, let me just load up with IGF-1 then. That's also not going to work because if you overload the body with IGF-1, the IGF-1 receptors downgrade themselves. And that's why the protocol that I designed for IGF-1 use is minimal. Use 10 to 20 micrograms a day, 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off. If you use more than that per day, or if you take it longer than that, it doesn't work anymore. Protein hormone receptors for like insulin and growth hormone and IGF-1 are very, very sensitive. And when you overflood them, they disappear. Androgen receptors, which occur in the nucleus or inside the cells, okay, are a little more forgiving. In other words, you can take a lot of anabolic steroids, and the androgen receptors don't downgrade as much as the protein hormone receptors, which occur on the outside of the cell membrane. And that's why you have to make the distinction between protein hormone and steroidal hormone. That's another reason probably why steroidal hormones build muscle so much better than protein hormones. I've never seen anyone get huge just taking GH. Have you?
No, absolutely not. Get ripped, but not big.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, if you had to figure out how to spend your money the most efficiency, let's say you had $500 a month to spend. I mean, you wouldn't go and buy GH first. You would go buy anabolic steroids first because that's the most bang for your buck.
Sure.
I mean, and probably after that, you'd probably go to clenbuterol because that's probably the best fat-burning bang for your buck. So on my list, GH is probably third, as far as contest prep goes. And for most people, you probably don't even need it, if you're, I have guys, and I tell them all the time, I said, don't miss your mortgage payment on your house because you think you need to take 25 IUs of GH a day. You're wasting your freaking money. And even if you're a pro and you're making $100,000, $200,000 a year, why would you want to spend all the profits that you make on growth hormone? Take half as much.
You wouldn't. But now, while we're right here at this point of the topic, why don't we also dispel the triage or the triangle of triad, I meant to say, the growth hormone, insulin, T3, T4, T3/T4 triad that's lunacy.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people feel that if they take GH, that they have to take thyroid hormone with it.
Right.
And
they don't.
And they don't. First of all,
what's funny before you explain it? All of these guesses that you guys are making out there, you don't have anything to base them on. You do no blood work. Even if you did, you wouldn't know how to interpret it. and you just go out and start taking drugs because you read on the internet somewhere that if you do this, and you're supposed to do this too. That's crazy. Do not do that. Yeah. Continue.
You made the most valid thing you just said, and the most potent thing is get blood work. I have guys telling me, I'm taking Arimidex for my high estrogen, and I'm taking Dostinex for my prolactin levels, and I'm taking Proviron to raise serum binding protein or to increase free testosterone. I said, do you even know what any of these values are? How do you know you have high prolactin? Well, I don't know. Get blood work, guys. Get blood work. You don't know if you have high estrogen. Why would you take an aromatase inhibitor if you don't know if your estrogen's high? Why would you take a prolactin inhibitor if you don't know if your prolactin is high?
The same with PCT. Why would you run, HCG and Clomid without knowing what your levels are before maybe you don't need it.
Yeah, well, but that we kind of know that that's a knee-jerk response that, when you go off steroids, people want to, kickstart their bodies, and it's a good probably practice to do that. But guys, he's 100% right. Don't start taking thyroid hormones in your off season unless your thyroid is low. There's really four values that you want to check when you check thyroid. The thyroid test is called the TFT, or total thyroid function test. And what you want to check is TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. That is the hormone your pituitary gland in your brain produces that stimulates your thyroid gland to produce thyroxine, or T4. Okay, T4 is the next thing you want to check. That's what's produced by the thyroid gland. T4 is an inactive thyroid hormone. That means it has to be turned into something else for the body to use it. Something else it's turned into is T3, triiodothyronine. That's your active thyroid hormone. That's the most important value when you're checking blood work. If your T3 levels are normal, then you're good. You don't need to take anything, okay? Usually, if T3 levels are normal, your TSH levels will be normal because your body doesn't need to produce tons and tons of TSH if you have normal T3. If your TSH is high, it's usually because your T3 is low, okay? T4 means nothing in the equation. It doesn't matter if it's low or high as long as T3 is normal. Okay, so if you go, I have guys that tell me, I heard you got to take T4 with your growth hormone. I said, why would you take T4? It's inactive thyroid hormone. Your body is not going to even convert it to usable form unless you have low T3 levels, and then even then it might not. So that's the stupidest hormone to take for a bodybuilder. The only people that should take T4 are people who are hypothyroid. meaning they don't produce natural thyroid from their body. For whatever reason, autoimmune disease, damaged thyroid, they had to get it taken out because they had cancer, whatever the case. The reason they like to supplement those people with T4 is because their bodies will then turn whatever T4 into T3 it needs. This way, if you give them too much T4, you're not going to overdose them. You're not going to cause a heart arrhythmia or any problems. It's very hard to dose someone properly on T3, especially for the rest of their life. So most doctors won't give T3, Cytomel, that's the common name for it. They won't give that to hormone replacement people. However, having said that, when bodybuilders diet down for a show, to get a little extra boost, it's not a bad idea sometimes to take T3. You wouldn't take T4 because T4 won't convert to T3 in the body if the body doesn't want to do it. But if you take T3, you don't have to worry about it converting because the T3 acts immediately as active thyroid hormone. So once again, off-season scenario, trying to grow, no sense in supplementing with thyroid hormone unless you're low. And if you're low, you probably want to go to your doctor because you probably have a problem. Growth hormone doesn't suppress T3 production, okay? If anything, it might enhance, from what I've read, T4 to T3 conversion. So when I would take GH, John, I used to have very high T3 levels, okay? My T4 was kind of on the low normal side because what my body was doing was converting more of the inactive to active.
Right.
So for me to take thyroid hormone would be ridiculous because I already had high thyroid hormone, you know?
The point is people just take drugs because they think they need to without doing the blood work. And if you don't do blood work, you're an idiot. I mean, if you're taking drugs and you're not doing your blood work, you're just stupid. And there's just no other way to, phrase that. You're stupid. So if you're doing drugs and you're not doing your blood work, you have no idea what's going on in there, whether it's your thyroid, your triglycerides, your testosterone levels, your prolactin levels, your estradiol. There's tons of things that could be going on in your body that are either causing you not to get results, keeping you from gaining muscle or losing fat or increasing your performance in any other way. You have no idea what you're doing. And so this is something, Dave, you and I have harped on this for so long, it's almost nauseating. But over the years, I mean, I can't, to this day, I am amazed when I hear of guys taking drugs and they're not doing their blood work.
Well, unfortunately, most people don't know what the hell they're doing. And, we got another question, Johnny said, was posted, and people want to know what the timing of GH, when the best time to take it is. Now, I've done a lot of thinking about this over the years, and, obviously when I was competing, I thought about it, dramatically, because really there was no one had protocols written out back then. We kind of created we built the protocols back then. And my thinking was that before bed, okay, when you're sleeping at night, your body naturally releases GH, okay? And at night, we know that it's a very anabolic environment in the body. Post-exercise, your body releases GH from the exercise. So that's a very anabolic environment. The only time our bodies are truly catabolic are in the morning when we wake up early. That's the natural biorhythms of our body release cortisol, which is a catabolic hormone, early in the morning hours. My rationalization for sleeping till 12 noon when I had no responsibilities was I'll avoid the catabolic morning, pulse. That was how I rationalized sleeping to noon every day. But putting that aside, I figured out that the best time to take GH is in the morning because the GH will counteract some of that catabolic nature and some of that muscle breakdown that might occur naturally in the morning. And I think that the mistake people made, especially when GH was first being taken, and you know this, John, everyone always said take it at night, no carbs in your body. What they were doing is they were basically assuming that when does the body naturally release GH? Well, it releases it naturally at night, and it releases it naturally in a low-carb environment. The difference is that when you take GH, you don't have to worry about its release. You're taking the actual hormone. So you don't have to simulate when it's naturally released because you're taking the stuff. You could eat 4 million grams of carbs and take GH, and you're going to still have the same effect from it. So I said that's a foolish thing to do, is to take it before bed, because that's when your body naturally releases it. Right. Take it in the morning. So I started getting all my athletes and all the people I advised to take it in the morning, and what people noticed is that they were getting a much more anabolic effect from it. Now guys take 25 IUs a day. They got to take it all day long. You can't take 25 IUs at one time. That's ridiculous. But back in the day, we would take 2, 3, 4 IUs in the morning. with breakfast, and everything was great, and I got great results from it. The second question that I got from people was that they posted was how to take insulin with that. Now, John, I'm going to pose the question to you. If a guy goes to you and says, should I take insulin, what do you tell them normally?
I want to know, first of all, are you taking growth hormone? Secondly, where's your blood work? What are your triglycerides and your glucose levels now? And probably I would just say no to begin with, because they're going to kill themselves.
Well, how about what kind of a metabolism do you have?
I'm just not a big believer in insulin. It's for some people, and I think it's for people on growth hormone who are experiencing some insulin resistance, that it's good for them. But straight up growth, I think they just get fat on it.
Right. And how about this question, John? Hey, what kind of metabolism do you have? Do you gain weight easy and have a tough time losing body fat? If the person says yes, that's not the guy you want to give insulin to. They don't need it. They got too much already.
Yep.
The person who doesn't gain weight easy, the person who's always lean and flat and too ripped and can't gain weight, that's the person that might need the insulin, because they may be a little insulin resistant while on GH. That was the case when it came to with my body. When I took GH, even 2 IUs a day, I could not gain a freaking pound. I was ripped, but I was flat ripped. You know what I mean? It wasn't even like a good pumped look. And I couldn't figure out what the freak was going on. The problem is that I produce so little insulin, which is healthy, and that's why I stay lean naturally, that I couldn't gain weight while on GH. So for me to take some insulin was helpful. Now, what kind of insulin do you take? That's probably another whole show we can do. But I found that Humulin R worked really well for me. It wasn't too fast acting like Humalog, because remember, we're not replacing our natural insulin production; we're supplementing. But it was fast enough, so it was in and out of your system in 5 hours. So you got 2 peaks basically. So I would take 8 to 10 IUs in the morning. 5 to 6 hours later, when the stuff ran its course, I would take another 6 or 8 IUs. And with Humulin R, you want to take about 5 to 7 grams of carbs for every insulin unit in your meals.
For every IU.
Yeah, and you got to do it every 2 hours, because the stuff peaks twice. So it peaks, and then 2 hours later it peaks again. So that we could do for another show. I don't want to go into insulin now because we're talking about GH. But bottom line is, you got to figure out if you're a candidate for it. Not everyone needs it.
That's right. But that goes to what we've been saying the whole show. I mean, they're taking stuff because they think they should, not because they're supposed to. Yeah. So, number one, you got to get your blood work done, and pay attention to those indicators like your metabolism, whether or not you're gaining weight or losing weight, or how ripped you are. These are all factors that play in, and you can't just haphazardly decide to start taking something if you don't know that you need it.
And the point you made, get your blood work checked. You know what? When it comes to GH use, you don't really need to get your blood work taken, because all you got to do is go buy a glucose monitor with some test strips, and you can test your blood sugar all day long, and you'll know exactly what it is. And you know what? A blood pressure cuff is not much more expensive. You get one in CVS, auto-inflate, you test your blood pressure a couple times a day. They're 2 very, very simple things you can do with all the money you spend on food, supplements, and drugs, guys out there, okay? 2 things you can buy: blood sugar monitor, a blood pressure cuff, and Royd test from my website, DavePalumbo.com, to test your gear to make sure it's real. And I can't wait till Bill Llewellyn comes out with a GH tester, which I'm sure he will. He's working on now, so guys can check their stuff to see if it's real. Those 3 things should be in your medicine cabinet. If you don't have those, you're an idiot. You're not doing your homework. You're not really the scientist that you think you are. But the bottom line is that the insane GH dosages are going to lead to a lot of bad health ramifications down the road. I don't want to see it. I know you don't want to see it, John. And that's why it's important that we put our foot down as the authorities in this area and tell people out there, rethink what you're doing. It's not worth it, and it's not worth spending your life savings on the stuff. You're not going to be Mr. Olympia any faster just because you're taking 25 IUs of GH a day.
Can't tell that to my gym members.
No. Yeah, the funny thing is your gym members probably don't even eat any protein in their diet. They're just taking the drugs.
Oh my, they are such a train wreck, every single one of them. When I start doing diet, I do a lot of diets down here, and when they first fill out their first week of how they're eating now, before they start on mine, it's so mind-boggling It's just so mind-boggling. Everybody's a nutritionist.
Yeah.
And all the nutritionists, every single one of them, breakfast is yogurt and fruit. Every single one. Every single one. And it's just hysterical. They eat so wrong, it's not even funny.
Yeah, they don't even eat enough protein. Guys, get your diet down pat first. Get your supplements that supplement the diet down next. Get your training down. Get your sleep down. Then worry about drugs. And the first drugs you can worry about is anabolic steroids. GH should be last on your list. Most of you out there have no right to spend the money you do on it because you know what? You can't even pay your rent. Pay your expenses first. Take care of your family first. If you have extra spending money and you want to use a little GH, 2 to 4 IUs is more than enough for 99.9% of you guys out there listening to this. Trust me, I promise you when I tell you this. I hope you take some of the advice that John and I gave you today. If not, fuck you, who cares? I don't give a shit. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. And that will take us to the end of another episode of Iron Rage, starring myself, Dave Palumbo, and John Romano. We'll see you next time.
Bye.